Good evening, Minister. I suppose a number of questions I have, some of them have already been asked, but I'll just put this to you. Would you consider making disability and autism training a mandatory element of all teaching training courses going forward, and make it mandatory for all qualified teachers to undergo disability and autism training as CPD? Because regardless of whether you're primary or secondary or PLC or even in university level, you're going to encounter students with additional needs, you're going to encounter students who are autistic, and I think it's imperative we're serious about being inclusive, that we ensure all staff are properly trained, because I think it's the biggest issue we hear from people who come in here who have first-hand experience with disability, and they talk to us about the lack of awareness and the lack of training in all sectors, but I think in education it's vitally important. And you gave details there about the number of special schools and classes, etc., that have opened of late, and of course that is absolutely welcome, but it's not enough to have the physical space. And I have been talking to parents where special classes or special schools have opened, but they have not been properly resourced. They do not have the proper trained teachers in place, enough SNAs, or they don't have a sensory room, or they don't have the equipment, or there's not even open communication between the principal and the school in general with parents. There's no access to therapeutic supports. We don't have enough NEP psychologists, and then we know that there's a huge shortage of therapists within the CNTTs, and I know that the support that they can give to teachers within a school around students who are transitioning, especially from one school to another, about their needs, it's invaluable. I remember receiving that when I was in teaching myself, and it was invaluable support that you could give to students coming in from primary school, and that's not there. And I suppose as well, a point that's been made, especially by, say, the organisations like As I Am, is that we need to be looking at classrooms being inclusive, and instead of the students in the special class or the autism class being put out in the prefab on the outskirts of the school, that they should be made the centre of the school as well. And also the use of restraint and expulsion of students with additional needs from special schools. It happens and it shouldn't happen, and I think it's not acceptable. It's very much linked to the lack of training and the lack of resources in schools as well. I know a number of people have brought up about the summer provision. It was established as July provision after a High Court hearing in 1993, which recognised that the children with severe needs lose skills over the long school holidays, and these skills may never be recovered. And when July provision was replaced by the extended summer programme, we saw it being opened up, the eligibility being opened up from 15,000 to 80,000. So the 8,000 students who attend special schools, less than 5% of them actually received summer provision this summer gone by. I think it was only 410 students got the full 4 weeks. Is there some way of safeguarding the children in our special schools going forward, that they will be prioritised for summer provision? You talked about looking at other options and in other jurisdictions, and you mentioned Malta, and it has a very, very good scheme and it's worth looking at. But they use people from other professions, and actually there's a number of schools down, I think they're the west of Ireland, that have run a very successful July provision, and what they do is they start organising in January, they go to their own staff, they go to staff in other schools in the locality, and then they go to student OTs and student speech and language therapists, people who are in third level, to come in and work with the students, and it's been really, really successful, and I think it's a model that needs to be looked at. And just in my own area then, just in relation to school transport, the remote area grant was offered to a number of parents in Cavan there in around the 8th of August. It's too late because it wasn't suitable for their needs, so they turned it down. So now they are eligible for a bus or a taxi, but that has to then go to tender, which takes a number of weeks. Then the driver may have to be Garda vetted and the bus checked. And I know one student who has not yet attended their autism class because they've no way of getting there. So why can that not be done months in advance? Because the transport has been approved, all right, maybe 6 months ago or longer, but it actually hasn't been enacted. And the very last point, sorry, Chair, about this, but the ISL there is mentioned there. I've been contacted by people who have a third level qualification in ISL from Trinity College, and yet it's not, even though it's an official language of the state, it's not recognised as a teaching subject. And when I've contacted the NCAA or NCCA, they blame the Teaching Council. I contacted the Teaching Council, they blame the NCCA. Can this be addressed? Because these people are qualified and they have another qualification, maybe in a different subject. They could go in and teach Irish Sign Language to our students in our schools. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pauline. Minister.
Thank you very much, Deputy. Just your first point around, I suppose, disability and autism training, and that, just in the first instance, and I absolutely 100% see where you're coming from there. I spent long enough myself, to appreciate the importance of giving confidence, and confidence would only come when people feel that they have a familiarity and a training in it. Going forward now, in terms of the Teaching Council, there's very much part of the qualification for the initial teacher training. They must now meet the qualification of inclusive education, that they must be trained in that as part of their affiliation, we'll say, with the Teaching Council and accreditation with the Teaching Council. The area of CPD in this area, I would appreciate, is very, very important, but I do believe if we get it right, starting with the new teachers coming out as it being part of their course and their qualification, I think that's the most solid building brick we'll have, and to continue alongside that, hand in hand, I suppose, the CPD in that area. Just in terms of the therapeutic supports, and I hear, and it has been raised by a number of speakers here around the therapeutic supports. Look, we have made progress in consultation with Minister Rabbitte and her department, and it is an advantage, obviously, to the schools. We need to have those resources in our schools. We are seeing a step-by-step return now with 136 posts coming into the special schools, 44 of which have automatically reinstated, the other 44, and as we go on to come in 3 tranches. But the Department of Education can make the provision for, we'll say, the teaching staff in terms of 1 teacher, 2 SNAs, and the other therapeutic supports, but we are working with the other department to ensure that that's put in place as well. Obviously, it's a holistic approach. In terms of the remote area grant, okay, and the 8th of August, I take your point there. I'm going to say to you that we are coming close to finalising the entire, I suppose, root and branch review of school transport, and looking at mechanisms of how to refine it, and it has improved of late, and I appreciate that you have said that, but there are areas where we absolutely can do better, and I certainly will take that on board in terms of the timing around the 8th of August and that. In terms of the July provision and the model that you referenced in other schools, I've seen some of those models and they're absolutely superb, where schools and staff have, I suppose, were thinking outside the box, as it were, and they went to other organisations, groups, or third level students or whatever, which in fairness now, in terms of the third level students, happens quite a bit. They are relied upon quite a bit, but there is greater scope there in terms of that. That is why I referenced earlier that we are looking, and you're familiar yourself, as I said, with Malta, but we are looking specifically at approaching maybe different groups, organisations, and seeing the models that have worked, and doing things differently for the model that will unfold for summer of 2023. I am absolutely committed to ensuring that we have a maximum uptake, if at all possible, here. Just a couple of other things in terms of the schools and the resources that are being made available to schools. Aside from from our point of view, from the department's point of view, aside from the staff, in terms of teachers and SNAs, there's also considerable, I suppose, a special class start-up grant of 6,500 made available to the school. There's an ICT grant of 6,700 made available to the school. There's an enhanced capitation, which is around €720 per student. There are considerable resources that are given in terms of special education by the Department of Education, and I think that's right and proper. And again, I'll go back to the fact, and I know I'm repeating myself now, 25% of our entire budget is now a budget that is dedicated to special education. So, look, like I suppose I said at the start, considerable progress has been made. We are moving in the right direction. There is still a body of work to be done, but I certainly will take on board, the very positive and concrete suggestions you've made, Deputy. I appreciate that.
Thanks very much, Sean Kenny.